We've had a lot of success on the West Coast, just in a small, way, but now it's become kind of worldwide, and, it's overwhelming, actually.
The taste of international superstardom is perhaps sweetest when experienced for the very first time. That sweetness is enhanced 1,000-fold when it comes at the end of a long and arduous apprenticeship, as was undoubtedly the case for No Doubt. The catalyst for their new acclaim was the release of the third single to be lifted from Tragic Kingdom. Its unforeseen success propelled the band to the top of the singles charts all over the world, and in turn helped fuel sales of the album, ensuring 1996 as the year that would linger on forever in the hearts of the band's members. The single release was Don't Speak, co-written by Gwen and brother Eric, but its open, emotional content being widely regarded as directly relating to the singer's broken relationship with Tony Kanal. These rumours generated much interest, helping to humanise the song and increasing its sales potential. On a musical level, the song also appeared to be the standout track on the album, making its single release inevitable. The individual elements of deeply personal lyrics and catchy tune combined wonderfully, and when Gwen's emotive vocals merged with the seductive use of the Spanish guitar sound and the downbeat subject matter, it was little surprise that it brought the band their biggest hit to date. The song had so much going for it that classic status was almost assured. Tragic Kingdom roared its way to number 1 in the Billboard charts as a direct result of the overwhelming success of Don't Speak. And at its commercial peak, the album was selling in excess of 500,000 copies per week, eventually achieving multi-platinum status. The glory continued into 1997 as the album and single won them nominations for 2 Grammy Awards, including that of Best Rock Album of the Year for Tragic Kingdom. Additionally, readers of the influential Rolling Stone magazine voted Just a Girl one of the best singles of 1996, and perhaps a little bizarrely, considering their 5-year professional career, the band were named runners-up in the Best New Artist category, pipped at the post by Marilyn Manson. From the moment they had formed in 1987, the band's musical agenda had always been one of hope and optimism, yet it was the Tragic Kingdom album that proved to be their most successful, containing some of the most emotionally desolate songs they had ever put on record. Titles of tracks such as Happy Now and End It On This served to create even more media-led gossip as to the meanings behind the record's emotional content. The band could not shake off the wide perception that the single, and indeed the album as a whole, was a product of Gwen's doomed love affair with Kanal, or that it contained references to her new relationship with singer Gavin Rossdale. But generally, Gwen and Tony's openness about such references won the band respect for the way they handled the speculation. The band were, of course, no newcomers to high-profile publicity, with Gwen particularly courting media attention as much for her photogenic looks as for her role as band leader. Her face had long since adorned the front covers of music and celebrity magazines in the States and across Europe. With Don't Speak emulating its American success in the European market, including the number 1 spot in the United Kingdom, Gwen and the band remained in constant demand for interviews and photo shoots, as well as for their live television and radio performances. They say every action has an equal and opposite reaction, however, and inevitably, No Doubt's seemingly undisputed glory couldn't last. The band had obtained Billboard success, a massive selling rock album, big ticks and 5-star reviews for their songs and live shows. It was only natural that a backlash would eventually arrive, and arrive it did, courtesy of American current affairs magazine Newsweek, and more surprisingly their previous advocates Rolling Stone. Coinciding with their Grammy nominations at the beginning of 1997, Newsweek published an article deriding the band, labelling their music skanky, and despite the readers of Rolling Stone taking No Doubt to their hearts, its critics were now less welcoming, petulantly naming them one of the worst bands of 1996. The content of the backlash appeared to be little more than an exercise in being controversial for the sake of it, however, and the band's gains in just over a year far outweighed the negative column inches. In spite of the cold shoulders offered by some factions of the music press, the band remained in high spirits, and with good reason. Their new fans around the globe and the accumulated sales of Don't Speak reached into millions. Rarely in the history of rock music can a song that advocated keeping quiet have spoken to so many so loudly. For several years, the band had worked hard on the live circuit and in the recording studio to achieve such acclaim, and Don't Speak brought them long overdue just recognition. They made sure they enjoyed it too, as the ultra-critical media began to ask the question that had undoubtedly been running through the minds of the band members: just how do you follow that?
She takes sometimes 2 hours to get ready for a show.
I do
Or an
not.
hour or whatever, and then me and these guys take like a minute and a half to get ready.
I don't take 2 hours. I have it down to at least, I can do it in 25 minutes.
With their marketing currency at an all-time high, the band capitalised and toured Tragic Kingdom into the ground. The album's success had been phenomenal, beyond even the expectations of the band, let alone the largely sceptical Interscope. To the great delight of a hard-working live band, the record was not only being heard on stereo systems around the world, but also in the concert arenas of the United States and in Europe, as hundreds of thousands of fans, new and old, clamoured to see the band of the moment. A huge proportion of the ticket-buying audiences were music-mad teenagers keen to see a group branded as America's Most Wanted by the more supportive members of the music press, as well as allowing themselves the opportunity to worship at the altar of their newfound pin-up goddess, Gwen Stefani. The extensive touring was also the band's way of thanking those other legions of fans who'd been so loyal over the years, eventually helping to send No Doubt's career into commercial orbit, a status somewhat unthinkable at the time of their debut release in 1992. In less than 5 years, the band had risen from the ska punk underground to join the ranks of the money-rich, celebrity-driven mainstream pop musicians. With sales of Tragic Kingdom showing little sign of abating, No Doubt was obviously keen to exploit the golden goose for as long as commercially possible, and the fans were delighted. Being the authors of a chart-beating album allowed No Doubt to cross the fine line from the underground to mainstream, which in turn saw the band's following increase and diversify. In spite of the group's new worshippers, they steadfastly refused to change their onstage act. And as the tour to promote Tragic Kingdom began to wind down towards the end of 1997, their reception continued to be rapturous at every arena in which they performed. A brass section had been hired for the tour, further enriching the band's live sound, and this more sophisticated, professional execution underlined the huge distance No Doubt had travelled since their early days playing ska cover songs. As the title track of their million seller reached its rocking climax, it gave way to punk-based Excuse Me Mister, an upbeat tune that allowed the band the freedom to display its inherent energy and performance, bounding across the stage in thrilling fashion. Those two songs provided an opening salvo from which the show springboarded into life, with Gwen's stunning vocal and physical athleticism enabling her to hold the audience spellbound, comfortably in the palm of her hand. An unplugged version of Hey You was followed by the omnipresent Don't Speak, its sheer majesty and emotional resonance mesmerising all who listened. A reverential nod towards the band's ska roots presented itself with Move On, before the finale Sunday Morning and the curtain call Spiderwebs, which sent a beaming audience home feeling they'd undergone a magic carpet ride, courtesy of a 4-piece band from Orange County, California. After winning the hearts of America and much of Europe, the band bowed out of their exhausting Tragic Kingdom tour following successful visits to New Delhi and Singapore. With touring over, the band felt compelled to move forward, all too aware that in a competitive music industry in which you're only as good as your next record, it was time to show that No Doubt could easily live up to the high standards they had set themselves. Thus, they began working on the follow-up to their career-defining album. The key question, of course, being, how do you follow an album as huge as Tragic Kingdom? For No Doubt, the answer would prove to be you write an even better one.
We were never going to be cool enough or tough enough, But for some reason, we got our, 15 minutes. But really, I think it's probably going to be 5. These days, you only get 5 minutes. We're just trying to enjoy every second of it while it's here, and, we don't take one day for granted.
Of course, it was not going to be that simple. Having spent more than 2 years traversing the globe in support of Tragic Kingdom, there was a distinct lack of ready-made songs at their disposal when the band were ready to think about a new album. Despite their exhaustion, the band decided to take only 8 weeks holiday before returning to the studio, feeling under pressure to deliver a follow-up equal in quality to its predecessor. Reconvening in February 1998 with Tragic Kingdom producer Matthew Wilder, things failed to gel as they had done to wondrous effect 3 years earlier. The band parted with Wilder on amicable terms the following summer, but not before they'd combined to produce somewhere in the region of 40 demo tracks. Nevertheless, a new producer had to be found, and it was to be a further 6 months before they would hit upon a suitable contender early in 1999. Glenn Ballard had been the man behind the astronomical rise to success and fame of singer-songwriter Alanis Morissette, and he came on board with No Doubt, initially to pore over the mountain of demo tapes the band had gathered in the year since entering the studio. Pragmatic and yet direct, Ballard streamlined the content of the tapes he had at his fingertips, reducing the material by half. The band still recorded more than 20 tracks and a potential track listing began to take form. A further 6 tracks were then sliced, leaving 14 to make the final cut. No Doubt now had a complete record, mixed and ready for release, but at this point found their work subject to unwelcome record company intervention. Much of the momentum created by Tragic Kingdom had already been lost due to earlier production difficulties, and when Interscope declared disappointment with the final version of the as-yet untitled follow-up, further hold-ups looked inevitable. This resulted in tensions within the band, which they wisely decided to remedy by taking a short break to allow everyone to cool off. The break did the band the world of good, and far from causing them to fade out of the public eye, Gwen managed to keep herself active and in the spotlight by indulging in several collaborations. In 1999, her vocal gifts were requested by 2 of America's most feted musicians. Firstly, she and her partner Gavin Rossdale combined talents on behalf of his band Bush. The pair shared vocal duties on the track Space Travel, which appeared on his band Bush's 1999 record. She then contributed to the Prince album of that year, duetting with him on the song So Far So Pleased. Gwen was on a roll again and could barely be kept out of the music charts. A track she recorded in 1994 with Californian band Sublime resurfaced on their greatest hits record, but it was her next collaborative move that would prove to be the most lucrative. Dance guru Moby, also in the process of recording an album at the time, asked Gwen to contribute with a vocal on the track Southside. In so doing, Gwen found herself attached to yet another million-selling record with Moby's album Play, selling hugely around the world for the remainder of the 90s. Gwen's continued work throughout the band's enforced break had proved fruitful, the end result of which was keeping the No Doubt profile high, as well as whetting the fans' appetites for the new No Doubt material. Gwen and the boys then returned to the studio fully refreshed and recorded a brand new track, Ex-Girlfriend. It became apparent as the song emerged that it was one of their finest numbers to date, and also a potential big hit. The recording of this track and its inclusion on the album resulted in grudging vindication from the record company and provided No Doubt with a worthy follow-up single to Don't Speak. The album earned its title as a consequence of Gwen Stefani turning 30 years of age during the making of the record. Astronomers claim that with this birthday, the planet Saturn returns to the very spot in which it was situated at the time of one's birth, leading to a lengthy period of self-analysis. Gwen had reached that all-important stage of her life, and after undergoing said period of reflection, the title of the most important album of the band's career presented itself, Return of Saturn. After a solid 2 years in the making, it was finally ready for its first public airing, and the band braced themselves for further live work and promotional gigs, giving their fans the first new No Doubt material in more than 4 years. As expected, the first track to be made available as a single was their strongest new song, Ex-Girlfriend, released in February 2000. When its source album finally hit the shops 2 months later on the 10th of April, it was voraciously consumed by the die-hard fans, desperate to hear the new sounds from their favourite band. What they received was not a totally new formula, but nevertheless a bunch of well-crafted rock and pop songs, a mixture of up-tempo tunes and emotional power ballads. The track New doffed its cap to the grunge era, sounding as it did like Nirvana, but with an uplifting chorus. Since the departure of her big brother, Gwen had assumed the position of chief lyricist, and the themes of her relationships, both broken and bound, had found their way onto many of the tracks. Former partner and bassist Tony Kanal, already the subject of Don't Speak, was generally presumed to be the focus of Ex-Girlfriend. However, it was eventually revealed that the song was written during a break in her relationship with Gavin Rossdale. The lyrics for Bathwater also alluded to her past relationships with open and honest sentiment. With the success of Tragic Kingdom riding largely on the strength of one monster single, Return of Saturn was for the most part considered, in contrast, to be No Doubt's most cohesive album. Don't Speak was an impossible act for any band to follow singles-wise, and it appeared evident on hearing the new record that they didn't intend trying to do so. The album's consistency was notable, with the obvious singles sitting comfortably alongside a batch of songs that were anything but filler. In spite of the early teething problems in the recording stages, Return of Saturn saw No Doubt at their most emotionally accessible, creatively recharged and ready to take on the world all over again. Of course, there was the usual array of doubters, principally amongst the more hostile members of the music press, who were willing the band to walk into the tripwire created by their own success and come tumbling down on their collective knees. Gwen and the boys, though, expressed characteristic professionalism and belief in their own talent, negotiating successfully the difficult path that presents itself when a band tries to follow up a million-selling hit album. Although the record did not quite achieve the chart success of its predecessor, performing disappointingly in the Billboard charts and reaching only number 31 in the UK, No Doubt had nevertheless managed to match their career-defining album with another record of solid original compositions. Many bands would have folded in the face of the various problems afflicting them since Tragic Kingdom, not least the fact that it took more than 4 years to follow up their original. No Doubt's characteristic determination, though, had seen them through the dark times, the writer's blocks and troubles in production, and had invested them with the dignity required to shrug off the harsh words of less than enthusiastic music critics. They had leapt the many obstacles put in their path and provided their fans with another fine record to treasure. No Doubt's long-awaited return to the music scene with Return of Saturn, despite its average chart performance, was the ideal way for the band to enter the new millennium, steering them with confidence towards 2001 and their 10-year anniversary. Any ghosts that had been left after the Tragic Kingdom era had been effectively ushered out of the door with the new record. There was nothing left for them to prove, either to the press, to their fans, or to themselves. Their 10th birthday would be some party.
It is nice after 9.5 years of playing together to get to this point where we might have at least a short career in music and we can kind of not have to go and work other jobs, go back to flipping burgers for a little while at least.
Way back in those early days of 1992, following the decidedly lukewarm reception that greeted their debut album, few people would have reckoned the band had within them a decade's worth of music to make together. But December 2001 witnessed the anniversary of a band do just that. Those 10 years since No Doubt signed on the dotted line with Interscope had seen chart failure, followed by industry credibility, and then finally the long-awaited global recognition. It had been an exciting yet bumpy journey. Their anniversary was commemorated in time-honoured fashion with lots of partying, some live performances and even a new album. Arriving just 18 months after Return of Saturn, No Doubt's fifth studio album Rock Steady was an appropriate title to commemorate their 10th year together, and it saw the light of day on 11th of December 2001. Not only did it prove to be a classy return to the charts, it also restored No Doubt's commercial reputation and reaffirmed the band's commitment to each other, their music and to their fans. The record contained several surprises in amongst the more recognisable No Doubt fare. It certainly embraced a new modern sound, combined with a return to the ska and reggae roots of their youth. The sheer fun and sexiness of the record proved irresistible to lovers of many musical genres, including dance, rock and even hip-hop. Whereas Return of Saturn provided a consistent album of emotional honesty, its darkness might have proved to be a little too much for many of those who'd worshipped Tragic Kingdom. Rock Steady, with its brightness and optimism, seemed to reach out for those earlier fans to come back into the fold. The band had spent much of the previous 18 months soaking up yet more influences, not least Jamaican music, which they stumbled across whilst touring the Return of Saturn album. Many of these were in evidence on the new album, and the upbeat agenda of the new disc dripped with the attendant happy vibe of reggae music. If the album sounded slick and healthy, as perhaps only a band in celebratory mood can, then maybe that was because there was much to celebrate. December 2001 signified a milestone for No Doubt in more ways than one. As well as marking the first decade of the band's recording career, Gwen's on-off relationship with Gavin Rossdale was most definitely on. It was also exactly 6 years since a concert at the Los Angeles Amphitheatre, sponsored by a local radio station, proved to be a pivotal event in turning around the fortunes of Tragic Kingdom and assisting its huge rides to international success. And by way of honouring that turn in their fortunes, it was to that very same venue the band returned to help commemorate their anniversary in the company of rock bands Linkin Park and Stained. Their performance at this concert also served to confirm that there was still an important role for No Doubt to fill in the contemporary music scene. The new album was laced with heavy irony. Whereas their debut album 10 years earlier had been dismissed in some quarters for being out of tune with the musical climate of the age, Rock Steady was anything but. Although hardly seizing the new metal obsession of many of America's teenage record buyers, Rock Steady did have a debt of gratitude to pay to the lucrative and widespread hip-hop industry, a musical genre now capable of selling massively in the States and across the globe. The spirit of hip-hop music ran right through the album, and thanks had to go to the wide range of influential producers whose talents were employed to ensure No Doubt would sound modern and relevant in their anniversary year. Produced ostensibly by Rick Ocasek and featuring popular reggae duo Sly and Robbie, No Doubt continued on this album in their love of combining influences with experimentation and produced some wonderful music as a result. The sound of ska and reggae remained in evidence, most notably on the ragga-tinged opening single Hey Baby, which crashed into the UK top 5 in its first week of release. The album's reggae inclination was also suitably highlighted on the track Underneath It All, which featured a guest performance by Jamaican vocalist Lady Saw, but there was also a perceptible refreshing diversity to the record. In addition to Sly and Robbie, Prince undertook some writing duties, returning the favour to Gwen for her contribution to his record in 1999. Production was further shared around various hip-hop luminaries, such as Nelly Hooper from Massive Attack, plus the man who'd revived Madonna's late 90s career, William Orbit. A crucial signing, though, was the respected production team, the Neptunes. Their contribution to Rock Steady served the band well, providing as they did the stunning track Hella Good, a vigorous combination of electric beats spliced to thrilling effect with Tom Dumont's dexterous guitar playing. As the celebrations continued for the band, it was also a time for reflection on their past. It had been 6 years since the incredible Tragic Kingdom album had been unleashed upon the world, moving the group up the table from also-rans to genuine world beaters. Unsurprisingly, some of the fans who had worshipped that album had moved on. No Doubt had moved on with them, and their new album gave fans, both old and new, something fresh and mature, and still sounding like a band with plenty to say in the new century. Whilst remaining true to their youthful influences, the group had shown sufficient confidence to experiment with their music, and they'd obtained stunning results. Consequently, Rocksteady, free of the teenage angst previously dominating the charts, invited everyone who heard it to sing, dance and celebrate. The new album had brought excitement back to modern pop music, and the sun shone brightly from every groove. Even more heartwarming for the band was the critical reception the record received, in addition to the chart success it had already attained. The warm welcome that was afforded the band on their return to the Los Angeles Amphitheatre was of great importance to No Doubt. They might have discovered they were no longer welcome at the party after a 10-year stay, that the records they played were just a little too old and unheard of by the members of the modern musical era. Maybe they expected to see the dance floor empty before their eyes as soon as they cranked up their guitars. But lest we forget, this was No Doubt's party, and nobody wanted to leave. The band had earned their plaudits through their hard work and dedication to music over the years. Their decade of toil and sweat in the name of recognition and vindication was complete. They could breathe out, relax, and enjoy the sunshine. Their biggest hit during that decade might have been entitled Don't Speak, but speech had never been a necessity for No Doubt. Their songs had always been the only language required.
Thank you for buying Maximum No Doubt. We hope you enjoyed it. Watch out for further titles on Chrome Dreams coming up soon. If you did enjoy it or have any comments or suggestions, write to us at Chrome Dreams, PO Box 230, New Malden, Surrey, UK, KT36YY, or email on mail@chromedreams.co.uk. Details of our full catalogue are listed on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk. Thanks again for listening and goodbye for now.